joined by interior designer Helen Austen, who works with general contractors on a daily basis. So she's here to share expert advice on what red flags to watch for before you sign on that dotted line. Helen, thank you for being here.
It's always great to be here.
All right, talking about red flags and all that good stuff, what would you say is the first red flag when you're considering a contractor?
Poor communication. I think this is probably one that people feel is a pain point often when they don't suddenly, can't get a hold of them or they don't reply or respond to you. It is a red flag. And so early on when you're starting to contact them and just having them take, interest and to find out if they want your project and how they work, kind of monitor that. If you see any things that just don't make sense, it's a yellow flag to some extent, but it might be one of those building pieces that might be one of the things where you're like, they're not a great fit.
Yes, especially if you see a lot of yellow flags kind of
Yeah, they
build up.
really do build up. But this is one where it's really important. Once again, we have a lot of money exchanging hands, and so when suddenly communication ceases and you have strangers in your house, man, you want that communication in place. So I have contractors who actually will tell you how they're gonna communicate. They tell you their boundaries. I have one that says, we don't communicate on the weekends unless it's an emergency. So when they are sharing these things up front, it's actually a really good sign that they have a process and a plan in place, and communication should be good. Yeah.
Now, contracts are obviously something that are super important in home renovation. So what should we know when considering a possible contractor?
Okay, if there's no contract, run.
Yep.
I'm serious, this is really important because a contract not only is what you can expect between both parties, but also it has the scope of work. Because a lot of times in these projects, we have something called scope creep, and people start adding, or they'll be like, I told you to do that, be like, no, I didn't. So that scope that's in your contract is really, really important. And then if it's vague, if it's like a page long, still not sufficient, not really a great contract. So make sure there's a contract that outlines anything you think that could possibly happen, and that includes a scope of work.
Should we hesitate when a contractor pressures us to maybe make a fast commitment?
Yeah, run. There's really no reason.
Just run.
Your good contractors, they have a wait list. That's not always the best indicator that they're the best, that you can get. But normally they have a wait list because they have, a history of referrals that have then gotten them a lot of business. So there should be no pressure. If they ever say, oh, I need to know because we this, and this, run.
Another thing that we have to think about is money. So what kind of deposit should we be expecting when we get into this?
So my good contractors, they have started doing something called a project development fee, and that's much smaller than the whole project itself. We're talking $1,000 to maybe a couple thousand if we're dealing with a really big project. And that sounds small. That is small compared to some of the projects that we work with, and that's reasonable. So basically you're paying them for their time to kind of get the front end of that, to get the scope of work, to get everything defined and be able to establish what that relationship and that project's going to look like. That's worth doing. And then deposit-wise, it should never be 50%, definitely not 100%. Yeah. A lot of mine, they vary across the board, so it's the conversation to have with them. Some are like 25% up front, and then at these benchmarks, it'll be another 20 or another 25. All different across the board. So find out, but it shouldn't be 50, and it definitely shouldn't be 100%.
Yeah, you're like, those again are those bright red flags that you want to have that conversation. Now, this next question, I always wonder about this, but online reviews, can these be trusted? Is this something you should take just as is, or what do you say when it comes to these?
I think word of mouth is really best in my experience in bringing contractors onto projects. Someone who has used a contractor for a very long time and only has glowing words, that's probably your best indicator.
If people want to follow along with you and they want to continue to receive this great information, what's the best way to connect with you?
My website is helenausten.com, and Austin is with an E-N.